Welcome, my friends, to Shaking the Salt with Dr. Peppers. At the end of the message, stay tuned if you want to contact me for any reason, including prayers. Thank you, and I'm Dr. Peppers, Shaking the Salt. Here we go. For those of you that didn't know, my husband has finished his cancer treatment and got to ring the bell, but also because he was so beloved by the doctors, the nurses, the staff, and even the patients in the waiting room, he was invited to be the guest speaker at the big fundraiser this past Sunday, which was a big gala event held at a venue outside of Mount Dora, Florida. And wow, what a great job he did. He had me crying. He had most of the audience crying, and he even did a little bit himself. But without further ado, I want Bud to tell his story. I recorded it, but unfortunately, it was a little windy, and you'll hear some of that. But here's Bud.
Well, people say that public speaking is the most terrifying thing there is. Oh yeah? Try cancer. Last fall, I had a routine test performed, and it indicated that I possibly had cancer. My doctor performed a biopsy, and it came back negative. So my wife and I were pretty happy about that. Well, she's a very cautious doctor, being with Advent. She said, I'm going to do a couple more tests just to confirm that it's negative. So she ran several tests. My wife and I, thinking things are going to be fine, we booked a cruise to Bermuda to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary. So during the cruise, we get a call from my doctor, and she said, well, I've got your test results in. I want you to come in immediately. I said, well, that's going to be kind of hard because I'm in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle at the moment. So she said, when you get a chance, come in and I'll talk to you. I'm thinking, wait, does she have good news for me? Or does she have bad news for me? Has the Bermuda Triangle made another victim? Anyway, we get back and she said, well, it looks like you do have cancer. Of course, I'm terrified because nobody wants to hear that. Well, we talked about treatment options, and we finally concluded that radiation was the best way to go. I said, well, you know what you're doing. I think that that's probably what we should try. She said, I recommend Dr. Keynote in the Advent Oncology Department. I hear he is excellent. So I booked an appointment with him. My wife and I go over. We're sitting in his exam room. This very young person walks in wearing a lab coat, and he says, I am Dr. Keynote. I went, well, how long have you been a doctor over here? He said, 3 weeks. I said, how am I going to deal with that? Well, it just happens that I am a retired pharmaceutical chemist. I retired after 28 years of running a testing laboratory in St. Louis. I hired many young advanced scientists into chemistry positions. I knew that the younger ones that were fresh out of school had more of a passion for the job than the ones that had been around a long time. So I figured Dr. Keynote, being a newer doctor, he's really what I really wanted. So I told Dr. Keynote, I'm kind of glad that I'm getting a younger, motivated doctor. Well, he said, well, you're getting a younger, fresher doctor now, and just think, a few years from now, you'll have an older doctor who's got a lot of experience. So I thought, well, I can't lose there. That's really good. Well, having done my research on cancer treatments for my particular situation, I found that the newest radiation technique that would be best for me was called image-guided radiation therapy. I knew that was going to be the best, but I did not know if Advent would even have that yet. I walked into Dr. Keynote's office, and he immediately, before I said anything, said, we're going to be using image-guided radiation therapy to cure your cancer. I thought, okay, my comfort factor can't get any higher now, that's for sure. I threw a bunch of questions at him. He answered every single question, and believe me, there were a lot of questions. He gave me both written and online resources. It answered questions that I didn't even know I had yet. So then he hands me a document called a patient passport, which I've never seen anything like this before. In this document, there is a business card for every person that's involved in my treatment during my cancer therapy. It's got their business card and their position. One by one, they came into the room, introduced themselves, told me what their position was and how they personally were going to help me through this cancer treatment. I just think this was just a wonderful thing. This really made me feel good. So I knew how to contact each one if I needed to. Over the next 6 weeks, I came to pretty much know everybody involved in my treatment. I could get a hold of them anytime I wanted through the passport. And so my comfort factor was really up in the air. It seemed like everybody there actually took an interest in me personally, which I thought was really good. They asked about my family, what I was doing, how things were going in my life, and of course, if I had any issues with my treatment, they said they would address them immediately, which they did. So I even laughed and joked with all the people there. And one of the things I did was wear a shirt like this to every one of my treatments. So I now have enough of these shirts for 28 treatments. So I had to continue that on with today's celebration. Well, every week I also had a personal appointment with Dr. Carode. He talked about my progress during the week. If I had any kind of issues whatsoever, he addressed them immediately, made me feel great about what was going on. In addition to this, every day of treatment, my wife and I would have just a short period of time in the waiting room. So we got to know a number of patients in the waiting room. Many of them were eager to talk to us about their cancer issues and their treatment, and we were happy to talk with them too. Now, if you haven't noticed, throughout the hospital, you'll see signs that say, extending the healing ministry of Christ, and other biblical quotations of encouragement. My wife and I have a very strong Christian faith. And so every day in that waiting room, we would find someone, discuss their issues and fears, and then we said, can we pray with you? No one turned us down. We assured them that they were in the best place for treatment and that things would go well and they should keep a strong faith. Several of the sessions that I attended, my mother-in-law, who was visiting from St. Louis, came with us. She is also a cancer survivor. She had breast cancer at age 85. She had radiation, lumpectomy, chemotherapy, and now she's 98 and has been cancer-free for 8 years. She also tried to encourage some of the people in that room. And just seeing her age and that she was very healthy and very vital, it gave a lot of people quite a bit of encouragement, and they said, this disease is very treatable. At the end of 6 weeks of radiation therapy, I had the opportunity to go back into the waiting room and ring the large bell there, signifying completion of my treatment. I was really moved to see the entire staff there to cheer me on, just as they had from the very beginning. At the last clang of that bell, there was applause from all of them, the nurses, the staff, and the waiting room patients themselves. Having said all this, I'd like to ask everyone here, dig deep, offer as much support as you can to ensure that Advent continues to be the cutting edge, no pun intended, cancer curing hospital that it is, with the equipment and staff needed to continue the extension of the healing ministry of Christ. I would like to conclude with a poem. My wife is a retired English and speech teacher, and she writes poems for every occasion. She borrowed the title from Ernest Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls. If you could be there every time a patient rings the bell, you still would never really see the stories all should tell. The families and the children, all things they now can do, and how you'd never really hear the thanks they give to you. For those there at the hospital and good deeds never seen, you who give financial gifts or work behind the scenes. We can't express such gratitude, but please know this is true. With every bell rung comes our praise to God for each of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for staying on, my friend. If you would like to contact me, visit saltandlightministry.com. If you want to share your story with me, ask a question, have me come speak to your group, or maybe just request prayer. Once again, saltandlightministry.com. Thanks and God bless.